Growing up, I learned that blood doesn't always mean family, and family doesn't always mean love. My name is Claire, and this is the story of how I survived being invisible in my own home. My mother, Rebecca, married Marcus when I was 5 years old. I still remember that day, standing in my flower girl dress, holding a basket of rose petals, thinking I was finally going to have a complete family. My biological father had left before I was born, and I'd spent my early childhood watching other kids get picked up by their dads, wondering what that felt like. Marcus seemed kind enough at first. He smiled at me during the wedding, even ruffled my hair once. I thought maybe, just maybe, this was my chance at normal. Adrian was born 11 months later. From the moment she entered the world, everything changed. It wasn't immediate, not like flipping a switch, but gradual, like watching the sun set and realizing you're suddenly sitting in darkness. Marcus would spend hours holding Adrian, singing to her, showing her off to relatives. When I tried to show him my drawings from school, he'd give them a distracted glance and hand them back. "That's nice, Claire," he'd say, already turning his attention back to the baby. My mother noticed, I'm sure of it, but she never said anything. She'd married into stability, into Marcus's successful accounting firm and his comfortable suburban life, and I think she was terrified of rocking that boat. So she made a choice, conscious or not, to align herself with Marcus's affections. Where he directed his love, she followed, and he directed it all toward Adrian. By the time I was 10 and Adrian was 4, the household dynamics were set in stone. Adrian's artwork covered the refrigerator while mine went in a drawer. Adrian got enrolled in ballet, piano, and art classes while I was told we couldn't afford extracurriculars for both of us. When I asked why, Marcus said, "You're older, Claire. You should understand how to entertain yourself by now." I started spending my afternoons at the public library, losing myself in books about kids who found their real families, who discovered they were special, who escaped their ordinary lives for something magical. Middle school was when I discovered I was actually good at something. Really good. Science made sense to me in a way nothing else did. There were rules, logic, predictable outcomes. If you mix certain chemicals, you got a specific reaction every time. It wasn't like family, where you could do everything right and still end up invisible. My 7th grade science teacher, Mrs. Patterson, noticed my aptitude and started giving me extra assignments, harder problems to solve. I'd stay after school, running experiments, and for those few hours, I felt like I mattered. When I was 13, Mrs. Patterson told me about the regional gifted science program. Only 30 students from across 5 school districts got accepted each year, and it was considered a golden ticket for college applications. The entrance exam was notoriously difficult, covering advanced biology, chemistry, physics, and mathematics. Mrs. Patterson thought I had a real shot. I studied like my life depended on it. Every spare moment, I was reviewing notes, taking practice tests, memorizing formulas and theories. While Adrian watched television or went shopping with mom, I was in my room with textbooks spread across my bed. Marcus would walk past my open door without a word, but I told myself it didn't matter. This was for me. This was my chance to prove I was worth something. The day of the exam, I was so nervous I could barely eat breakfast. Mom was too busy helping Adrian pick out an outfit for a friend's birthday party notice. I took the bus to the testing center alone, my number 2 pencils clutched in my sweating palm. The exam was 3 hours long, and when I finally put my pencil down, I felt both exhausted and exhilarated. I'd known the answers. Not just guessed, but actually known them. 6 weeks later, the acceptance letter arrived. I'd scored a 98 out of 100, the highest score in the program's 12-year history. The letter congratulated me on my exceptional aptitude and remarkable potential. I read it 7 times, alone in my room, tears streaming down my face. Finally, I had something they couldn't ignore. That night at dinner, I waited until everyone was seated. Adrian was talking about some drama with her friends, something about who said what at lunch, and Mom and Marcus were listening like it was the most fascinating story ever told. I cleared my throat. "I have some news," I said, my voice shaking slightly. I slid the acceptance letter across the table to where my mother sat. She picked it up, skimmed it, and set it down. "That's nice, honey," she said, her tone pleasant but distant, the same tone you'd use to acknowledge someone mentioning the weather. Then she turned back to Adrian. "So what did you say to her after that?" Marcus didn't even pick up the letter. He cut into his chicken, not looking at me. "Pass the salt," he said. I sat there, the highest score in the program's history, suddenly feeling meaningless. That night, I cried into my pillow, trying to stay quiet so no one would hear. Not that anyone was listening anyway. The program started 2 weeks later. It meant staying after school 3 days a week and attending Saturday workshops. I loved every minute of it. My classmates were like me, kids who found joy in solving complex problems, who got excited about chemical reactions and physics theories. For the first time, I had friends who understood me. But at home, no one ever asked about it. Not once did Marcus or Mom inquire about what I was learning or how it was going. Adrian didn't even know what the program was called. 2 weeks after my program started, Adrian came home with a math quiz. She'd gotten a C+, and she was upset about it, tears rolling down her cheeks at the dinner table. Marcus immediately went into action mode. He pulled out his phone and started researching tutors. By the end of the evening, he'd hired a tutor who charged $200 an hour twice a week. He also took Adrian to the electronics store and bought her a top-of-the-line laptop, explaining that she needed better tools to succeed. I watched all of this from the kitchen doorway, invisible as always. My program required a graphing calculator, a specific model that cost about $80. I'd mentioned it once, and Marcus had told me the school should provide one. They didn't. I've been borrowing one from the program's limited supply, but there weren't enough to go around, and I often had to wait or share. A few days after Adrian got her new laptop, I worked up the courage to ask again. Marcus was in his home office, and I knocked softly on the door. "Come in," he said, not looking up from his computer. I was wondering, I started, my voice small, if maybe I could get that graphing calculator I mentioned for the science program. It's just $80, and I really need one for the advanced coursework. Marcus finally looked at me, his expression annoyed at the interruption. "Claire, you're a smart girl. You got into that program, didn't you? Figure out yourself. Learn to be resourceful. That's a more valuable skill than having everything handed to you." The irony of him saying that while Adrian's new $1,000 laptop sat charging in the next room wasn't lost on me. I left his office, my face burning with shame and anger. That weekend, I applied for a job at the public library. They hired me to shelve books for minimum wage, 10 hours a week. It took me 3 months to save up for that calculator, and when I finally bought it with my own money, it felt like both a victory and a defeat. High school brought new challenges and new disparities. Adrian was popular, pretty, and perpetually the center of attention. She joined the cheerleading squad, went to parties, dated the captain of the football team. Mom and Marcus attended every single one of her games, cheering from the stands, taking hundreds of photos. Meanwhile, I was winning regional science competitions, and they never came to a single one. Not one. When Adrian turned 16, Marcus surprised her with a brand new BMW. I watched from my bedroom window as she screamed with delight, jumping up and down in the driveway, while Mom recorded the whole thing on her phone. The car was white with a red bow on top, like something out of a commercial. Adrian drove off with her friends an hour later, music blasting, and I felt something hard and cold settle in my chest. My 16th birthday was 4 months later. There was no car in the driveway, no surprise, no party. At dinner, Marcus handed me a pamphlet for driving lessons. "When you're ready to learn, let me know," he said, "but you'll need to pay for it yourself. It's important to learn financial responsibility." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the pamphlet in his face and ask him why Adrian didn't need to learn financial responsibility. But I didn't. I just nodded and excused myself from the table. I picked up more hours at the library and got a second job at a grocery store, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. I worked every weekend, every afternoon after school at my science program. I was exhausted constantly, falling asleep over my homework, drinking too much coffee, but I was determined. I saved every single penny, keeping the cash in an envelope hidden in my sock drawer. 6 months later, I had enough for driving lessons and the test fees. The weekend before my lessons were supposed to start, I came home from school to find my room had been cleaned. This was unusual because Mom never cleaned my room, always saying I was old enough to do it myself. My stomach dropped. I went straight to my sock drawer. The envelope was gone. I found Marcus in the living room, reading the newspaper. "Where's my money?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. He looked up unbothered. "I borrowed it for Adrienne's spring break trip. She's going to Cancun with her friends. Don't worry, I'll pay you back. When?" I demanded. He shrugged. "When I can. Don't be selfish, Claire. Family helps family." He never paid me back. Not a single dollar. Adrian went to Cancun, posted hundreds of photos on social media, came back with a tan and stories about swimming with dolphins. I went back to work, started my savings over from zero, my driving lessons delayed by another 6 months. That was the moment something inside me broke, or maybe it was the moment something inside me finally hardened into steel. I realized that nothing I did would ever be good enough, that I would would never be loved the way Adrian was loved, and that the only person who was going to take care of me was me. I stopped hoping for their approval. I stopped trying to make them see me. I focused entirely on my escape plan. College, far away, a full scholarship, so I wouldn't owe them anything. Senior year, I applied to 15 universities. My guidance counselor told me I was one of the strongest applicants she'd ever worked with. Perfect grades, exceptional test scores, leadership in the science program, awards and competitions, plus 2 part-time jobs showing work ethic and responsibility. I applied to MIT as my dream school, not really believing I'd get in. The acceptance letter came in March, thick envelope, full scholarship plus a stipend for living expenses. I sat on my bed, holding that letter, and for the first time in years, I let myself cry tears of joy instead of pain. I was getting out. I was going to be free. That evening at dinner, I brought the letter down. I'd learned my lesson from the science program acceptance, so I waited until there was a lull in conversation. I got an MIT, I said clearly. Full scholarship. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but then his phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his face lit up. Adrian, you got off the wait list at Yale. Adrian squealed. Just like that, my acceptance to one of the best universities in the world was forgotten. Marcus was already pulling out his checkbook. We need to send the deposit right away, he said. How much is it? Mom pulled up the Yale website on her phone. $50,000 for the first year, she read. I watched Marcus write the check without hesitation, his handwriting bold and confident. $50,000. He'd stolen my $600 for driving lessons and never paid it back, but he could write a $50,000 check for Adrian without blinking. Congratulations, Claire, Mom said absently as an afterthought. MIT is good too. I went to MIT that fall and never looked back. I threw myself into my studies with the same intensity I'd thrown into escaping. I made friends, real friends who valued me. I discovered I was actually funny when I wasn't constantly trying to make myself small. I joined clubs, went to parties, had my first real relationship. I graduated with honors, double major in computer science and engineering. I got recruited by a major tech company before graduation, starting salary that made my head spin. I built a life, a good life, a life where I mattered. For 7 years, I had minimal contact with my family. Obligatory texts on holidays, nothing more. Then this past December, a card arrived at my apartment. It was a family photo, Marcus and Mom and Adrian, all smiling in matching red sweaters. Inside, in my mother's handwriting, "We miss you, Claire. It's been too long. Let's reconnect in the new year. Love, Mom." I stared at that card for a long time. Then I sat down on my computer and opened a spreadsheet. I itemized everything. Every dollar Marcus had taken from me. The driving lesson money, calculated with interest. The graphing calculator I'd had to buy myself when Adrian got a $1,000 laptop. The difference noted. The therapy bills from the years of treatment I needed to process the trauma of growing up invisible. The opportunity cost of working 2 jobs through high school instead of being able to do internships or additional coursework. I added up birthday gifts Adrian had received versus what I'd received, the value of the BMW versus my nothing, the Yale tuition versus my full scholarship that cost them $0. I calculated the emotional damages, the cost of growing up unloved in your own home, though I knew that number could never truly be quantified. The total came to just over $200,000. I printed it out, attached it to a formal invoice on my company letterhead, and mailed it back to them with a note. "You asked to reconnect. This is what you owe me. Payment plans available." I never expected them to pay it, of course. That wasn't the point. The point was showing them, finally, the cost of their choices. The point was saying out loud, "You hurt me, and it mattered, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." Marcus called me 3 days later, furious. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "We're family. You can't send your family a bill." "You're right," I said calmly. "Families shouldn't treat each other the way you treated me. But you did, and this is what it cost." "You were always so dramatic," he said. "We treated you fine. You had food, shelter, clothes. You went to college." "On my own merit," I replied. "With my own scholarship. You never spent a dime on my education. But you wrote a $50,000 check for Adrian without hesitation. That's different. She needed help, and I didn't." I felt my voice rising despite my intention to stay calm. "I needed help, Marcus. I needed a father. I needed someone to come to my competitions, to celebrate my achievements, to tell me I mattered. But you couldn't be bothered to even look at my acceptance letter to the gifted program." There was silence on the other end of the line. "I don't expect you to pay the invoice," I continued. "I don't want your money. I want you to understand what you did. I want you to sit with the reality that you had a daughter who needed you, and you chose to ignore her for 18 years. That has a cost, Marcus, and I'm done pretending it doesn't." I hung up before he could respond. Mom called next, crying. "How can you do this to us?" she said. sob. After everything we've done for you? What exactly did you do for me, Mom? I asked. I am genuinely asking. What did you do? She couldn't answer. Adrienne was the last to reach out, a long text message. She said she never realized how different our childhoods had been, that from her perspective, things had seemed normal. She apologized, said she wished she'd noticed, wished she'd said something. Her message ended with, "You're my sister, and I love you. I hope someday you can forgive us." I appreciated Adrienne's message more than the others, because at least it acknowledged reality. She'd been a child too, favored but not responsible for being favored. I wrote back and told her I didn't blame her, but I also couldn't have a relationship with her right now, because she was too connected to Marcus and Mom. Maybe someday, but not yet. The invoice sits framed on my wall now, a reminder of my worth. Not because of the dollar amount, but because I finally stood up and said, I deserved better. That's something 13-year-old me, showing her acceptance letter at the dinner table, needed to hear. That's something 16-year-old me, watching her savings get stolen for someone else's vacation, needed to know. I deserve better. I always did. These days, I have my own family, the one I chose. Friends who celebrate my successes. A partner who thinks I hung the moon. Colleagues who value my contributions. I'm building the life I always wanted, and I'm doing it without the people who couldn't see my value when it mattered most. Sometimes people ask if I regret sending that invoice, if I think it was too harsh. I don't, because for the first time in my relationship with my family, I told the complete truth. I stopped protecting them from the consequences of their choices. I stopped making myself small to make them comfortable. And that, more than any dollar amount, more than any achievement or success, is what finally set me free. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about family, resilience, and finding your worth.